Hi, Gran. I just wanted to speak to you about if you end up, unfortunately, in the court process, which I did. I didn't realise there was all these separate hearings when I embarked on it myself. So really wanted you to explain to our audience what those sort of, it seems to be sort of three stages, doesn't it? There's first of all, there's the first appointment hearing, which is also known as the FDA. And then you've got the financial dispute resolution appointment, which is the FDR, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then if you're still going on and it can't be resolved, then you do unfortunately end up at the final hearing. So can you explain what all those sort of different sections are and how long it sometimes takes between each one? And that'd be great, thank you.
So there are, like you say, three main hearings in the financial remedies process. So the first one, as you rightly said, is the FDA, or we refer to it as the first appointment. That's like a housekeeping hearing. So at that hearing, the court will decide which, by this stage, will have exchanged your questionnaires, and the judge will decide whether the questions are proportionate and what questions need to be answered and when they need to be answered by. They will also look at any other directions that are needed, such as valuations of property, valuations of businesses, or anything really that you need to get you to the next stage, which would be the FDR. So the idea is that by the time you get to the second stage, which is the financial dispute resolution hearing, that you've got everything you need from yourself and from your ex-partner in terms of assets and income to allow you to negotiate with all of the information that's required. Okay, so that is generally set out in a timetable, and you will exchange without prejudice offers before the FDR. And the FDR is the second hearing, and it's the most important in my view, and it's where most cases tend to settle, and quite rightly. So the FDR is it's a completely without prejudice hearing. So the judge will consider all of the evidence, will hear from each party or their representative, and will have seen your respective offers to settle. And the judge at that stage will give what's called an indication of what he or she would do if they were the final hearing judge. Of course, they haven't heard the evidence that you would hear at the final hearing, but they've got enough usually at that stage. And they will also, in my experience, give a really careful costs warning about what will happen in terms of your costs rocketing if you do not settle at that stage. So each party has the indication. You hope that the indication is along the lines of what your without prejudice offer was, and you go off and have a chat with, well, first of all, your representatives, and then see if there are any further negotiations that can take place at that stage. If it gives it some sort of context, in my career, which has been about 16 years exclusively in family law, I've only had three final hearings. I've got a fourth one. Yeah. So the FDR is really important.
Yeah.
When you can see how much the costs can escalate after that, it's really important.
Yeah.
If you do reach an agreement and all being well, then the judge will either sign or approve the consent order at that stage. But typically you'll be in court or outside court negotiating for the whole day. So quite often what you come to at the end is what we call heads of terms. So you can still be bound by them. It's not as good as a consent order, but the judge will approve them and you can apply to have those enforced if needs be. If you're unlucky and you can't at that stage reach a settlement, then the judge will set down directions to move it to the next stage, which is the final hearing. And at that point, they will look at what additional evidence is required. So the judge will typically give a direction for Section 25 statements. So they will go through the Section 25 criteria and set out your respective positions in terms of why, what your position is and why the court should fall in your favour, I suppose, at the final hearing. And at the final hearing, they will then, each of the parties will give evidence and will be cross-examined. And then you can still try and negotiate right up to the last minute, but if you don't manage to get there, then the judge will make an order. And that's a difficult position to be in, because you just don't know what the judge is going to do. 15 judges could give 15 different decisions, so you're very much in the hands of, I don't want to say in the gods, but in the hands of somebody making a decision for you and your family that you're much better making together if possible. So, and it can be a long and arduous and emotionally draining and expensive process. So, I would say my advice is usually do try and reach a compromise if at all possible.
Yeah, thank you very much.